Please welcome Dave DeWalt, Chairman of Claroty and former Chairman and CEO of FireEye and McAfee.
Good evening. How's everybody doing? Am I the last thing between you and cocktails? Is this how this works? I see everybody out at cocktails already. So first of all, just a huge thank you to the whole Team8 group, Nadav and Laurent. Give them a big round of applause, all right? Wow. What a great venue we have here. I've been a CEO for 17 years. I've never spoken in a bar, in a nightclub, and had 8 minutes to do it. So I'll try my best. Although, who here can count? Anybody here can count? How many speakers have we had so far? Just checking. It says 8 speakers, 8 minutes. Laurent, I think we've had 11. It's Team 11 now? Is that what we're going with, the brand? All right, give you a little grief. Hey, listen, I've been coming to Israel now, I think, for well over 20 years. I've been in high tech for 30, and it's amazing to watch the impact, the innovation that's happening in this market. I mean, I'm proud of coming here and being a part of this and being with the Team8 group as an investor and a board member, and it's exciting to come here. It's like Silicon Valley East, so kind of fun to watch all the companies. I'm now a part of 3 different Israeli companies, Forescout, Claroty, and Elusive Networks, which I just joined a part of as well, and just exciting technology all around, kind of fun to do. Listen, I want to spend just the remaining minutes talking about what I think is the biggest threat right now, or one of the biggest threats in all of cybersecurity. I've been fortunate to be in this industry for a long time, had 4 major companies, now a few more. I was able to create, I think, more than $25 billion in market value across all the companies. And as a CEO, I kind of focus on where the threat is and how to build a platform to go after it. And the one I'm going to talk to you about is some of the issues we're seeing in the industrial control areas, the IoT areas, and tell you a little bit about what's happening there. Before I do it, I always give a little bit of a history lesson if I could. After all this time here in the market, I've kind of come to realize, mankind always conflicts whenever it discovers a new domain, right? So if you think about over the last hundreds of years, what's happened? Whenever we discover new lands, oceans, air, space, and now cyberspace, what happens? We have conflicts over it, right? So unfortunately, this domain has a whole lot of new dynamics to it, right? What's the biggest one? We can't see our enemy. Probably the biggest challenge we've had in the last 20 years is attribution, identification, trying to figure out in this dynamic space that we're in, who's the enemy? We can't see it. In the battles over land, you could always see the whites of their eyes. The armadas in the seas, we could see it. In the air supremacies, we could see it. Here in cyberspace, one of the biggest challenges. The innovation, another major issue. Speed of technology, speed of growth. As we move from one network type, IPv4 to IPv6, we've seen trillions of devices, smarter and smarter systems, everything connected. I love what Irvan talked about, which is this hyper-connected, intelligent world. That's what we're in. And it's created almost a perfect storm, right? We've seen the attackers be very aggressive. The offense is much greater than the defense over the last 20 years. We've had very, very successful campaigns. And if you sort of look at what I'm showing up here, during my time in this market as CEO of McAfee and FireEye and Mandiant, we watched just a rise of danger levels in cyberspace. From basic hacktivism. Anybody here old enough to know the I love you virus and the Melissa virus, Code Red virus? You guys remember these? Right. At one point, we had 100 million signatures in the McAfee data engine. 100 million signatures. Pretty amazing. Translate that to the physical world. Can you imagine the world we live in? So it's interesting to watch all these quantity-based attacks that are still present today. We're seeing them now with ransomware and others, prolific virus spreading. But something happened along the way, right? Quality-based attacks, highly targeted types of attacks. I was witness to a major epiphany in my career in 2008, and it was interesting to watch. This was what we called Operation Aurora, and we woke up to see the Chinese military in a lot of the high-tech American companies. I ended up, as part of my companies, responding to 5,500 plus military breaches of commercial companies in America alone. Think about that, 5,500 plus. And these are all part of the IP war that US and China were a part of. And we started to see just highly targeted attacks. It was really a wake-up call to the dangers that were happening in cyberspace. Fast forward a little bit, we're starting to see a major information war upon us. I'm sure you've all seen the election processes. We responded to over 41 breaches during that time period as well, and major meddling in our social media systems. And do we understand the integrity of our data? Is it true? Is it false? And we're into this almost perfect storm again, and a pretty fascinating one. But the one I'm worried about the most is what we're seeing towards the right side of this. It's highly targeted, very focused attacks on this type of infrastructure. And this is what our lives depend on, right? Air, water, electricity, all kinds of means, transportation. I'm on the board of directors on Delta Airlines. Thousands of sensors are on every aircraft, 14 plus data gateways going up and down to satellite and ground transponders. How safe is that? How do we protect that? The digitization of this type of industry is moving so quickly that everything we depend on is really up here. Smart cities, satellite connections, critical infrastructure, every type of thing that we depend on. And this time, instead of stealing money or changing data, there's kinetic ramifications to attacks that are occurring here. So when I look at offense and defense and I think about what domain has the biggest issues, this is probably the biggest one that I see. How prepared are we to really solve industrial issues in our core critical infrastructure? So when you kind of look at some of the things that are happening here, what are the biggest things? Lack of hygiene. And this is what really caught the IP wars and the information war. We weren't ready. The hygiene wasn't there. So if you kind of can see that, what do we have? Flat networks. The biggest issue we walk into as part of our companies is we start to see the lack of air gapping between IT networks and OT networks. We see lack of authentication, lack of encryption, basic security capabilities. And if you think about the differences between an IT network where defense in depth for the last 20 years has been deployed, how much defense in depth has been deployed in the OT networks? Just about zero. Open protocols, easy to access. When we talk about the list of vulnerabilities in these systems, you don't even have to spearfish to steal credentials to gain access to PLCs and HMI devices. It's easy to do, it's on the internet. So our level has to improve. Of course, it's highly connected. A lot of professionals in the OT space connect remotely into their network to save time from driving to get there. They build remote access tools to get in. And what does that allow? Complete access by the adversary as well. So lack of just hygiene and knowledge of security. I can't tell you how many times now I've seen the OT world. You have plant managers, facility managers, been around the job 30, 40 years, almost zero security knowledge. Outstanding at safety issues, but very little controls over security. So how do we start to think about solving this problem much the way we were before? How do we build collaboration between IT teams and OT teams to solve this, especially as we see the technology moving quickly and really trying to solve that? Of course, visibility becomes the key. Do you know what your risk is? The number of companies and boards that I've walked into, talking to the audit chair and said, when's the last time you did a risk assessment related to OT? The answer is, I don't think we've ever done one. So it's time to wake up and kind of figure this out. So how do we begin to think about mind melding all these brilliant people in this room to help solve the OT problem as well? What's my biggest recommendations? Probably 5 things, and I'll walk you through them real quick. Do an assessment. Understand your risk. First thing we did at Delta Airlines was try to understand that risk. Are the thermostats connected? Is the HVAC equipment connected? How's my buildings organized? What kind of network topology do we have? What risk do we have to our aircraft? We did a major penetration test on our aircraft, and we tried to understand what risk was there. And so you have to understand that. There's a lot of great professionals in the world who know how to do this, but probably the biggest thing and the least expensive thing you can do is figure out what the risk is on your OT side and get it done. Pretty important thing. The other thing I'm advocating is a CISO begins to take responsibility for the OT network area as well, at least in governing the risk for it and starting to manage it. I think this is a critical element as well. How do we help bring all this wonderful talent we've had for 20 years to this OT problem? The tools are there now, the capabilities are there. We need to unite these professionals to help make it happen and happen pretty quickly. Last but not least, put in monitoring. Probably the biggest thing we can do today is put monitoring solutions in place. How many people in the room know what OT protocols are? You do? You heard of Modbus, DNP3, these types of protocols, very different than the IP network protocols. But the technology exists today, the monitoring capability, to put in place very secure and very safe guards. Sometimes it's not always malware and disruption. It can be safety issues due to misconfigurations. But the idea is, how do we put controls in place so we can respond quickly when there's an attack, quickly when there's a problem? Probably the number one issue we see is how to put that in place. Of course, this company I have is part of Claroty, unbelievable tool to walk in passively and understand the protocols, 50 plus protocols supported, Rockwell controllers, Siemens controllers, Honeywell controllers, and all the like. The ability to passively monitor it safely and security, and be able to do it in a way that unites into a SIM, an environment where you can manage events. Pretty unique way to do it. Some great technology here built. Other things to do, build a single pane of glass for the OT, just like you've been doing in security. On the IP side, understand your threat, understand your risk, correlate the events into an environment, and allow your incident response teams to manage OT events just like you would manage IT events. Probably the single biggest thing, lack of visibility, understanding what to do in a disaster. If you look at some of the use cases I'm sure you've all seen with Black Energy, crash override, some of the recent ones that have occurred, what was the biggest thing? Time to respond. Didn't know how to do it. The incident response teams didn't know how to record and resolve the issues that occurred in the OT world. Biggest problem we see. Last couple things, red teaming, regular exercises that we see. Great to see Shakar here and Levy and the whole team from Signia. How do we bring in experts like them to understand how to red team this and really understand what the attackers can do and how to defend against it? So how do we build this into our DNA? Build it in at the C-level suite and make them understand the risk and bring this problem to bear in the marketplace today. So a great opportunity for all of you, hopefully, to work with your boards, your C-level environment, to really unite what I think is a really big problem in the industry today, is solving this one. So thank you very much, and looking forward to drinks with everybody and hang out a little bit more. So thanks, everybody. Cheers.